what can you impute to the state of mind that a government doesn't want its people to get food, doesn't want its people to have medicine, doesn't want its people to be able to live under shelter? That's pretty clear what their intent is. I remember I explained that the crime of genocide includes attempting to destroy a people in whole or in substantial part. You don't have to actually succeed. You have to know and prove what the intent was. And there are open statements boasted by the likes of Sarath Fonseca as recently as September of 2008, where he says, Sri Lanka, Sinhalese nation. Period. No commas, colons, question marks. Period. This is the Sinhalese nation. And he's quoted as saying, yes, and Sinhalese Buddhists have ruled this country for centuries, and it shall stay that way. He acknowledges that other forms of life can live as long as they remain in a state of vassalage or serfdom to the Sinhalese Buddhists. But the mindset there is clearly one of genocide and belief that if you're not Sinhalese Buddhist, you shouldn't be on the island. What we intend to do once I'm back in the States next week is present the indictment to the State Department, the Secretary of State, the Attorney General. They're the ones we'll have to, in the executive branch, to approve going forward on this score. We have our contacts in the U.S. Congress, which will encourage them to write letters saying this is outrageous. U.S. citizen complicit in genocide, U.S. green card holder. We've got to go forward. How can we lecture Serbia on the need to get Matko Mladic and Milosevic and Karadzic in genocide situations if we're not doing ourselves? We have to, and Obama, you want to recapture moral standing in the world? Don't overlook and blind yourself to genocide right under your nose. Now, in a situation like this, nothing is ever easy, because we will know that the preoccupations in the foreign policy realm of Obama will be Iran's nuclear weapons, it'll be Iraq and trying to extricate ourselves there, it'll be his 30,000 more troops in Afghanistan, what he's going to do, it'll be the Gaza Strip and Israel and the West Bank and that huge mess. The reason is because in those areas there's political constituencies that are going to vote for or against a politician, in part because how well they resolve them. I'll be candid with you, there are very few organized Tamil or Sinhalese groups in the United States, one way or the other, that have any political influence whatsoever. And I say this with callousness because I know the politicians and their mindset is their actions are driven by what's going to affect my fate at the next election cycle. No one thinks in the United States their ability to be reelected turns on what they say or do about Sri Lanka. No one really cares politically because the communities are too tiny. And Sri Lanka doesn't have nuclear weapons. They don't have oil like Saudi Arabia, so you're not going to affect the price of gasoline. So, all right, that's fine. So our job then to say, hey, so what? We're the United States of America. These are our people. We can't let our people engage in genocide. This is horrendous. This is terrible. We can't let this continue as a free people. And that's what our task is. It's a task that requires an enormous amount of education and resources because people don't naturally learn about Sri Lanka since it doesn't have that great stature on the international stage that would obligate you to know what Russia's like because they got ICBMs, or what China's like because they sell us so many goods and buy our treasury bills, you know, what Saudi Arabia's like because they have 8 million, 9 million, 10 million barrels of oil per day. So it's this educational effort, somewhat what I've gone through today, that is required in order to get them to understand what's going on. One of the handicaps we have is since 9/11, the Sri Lankan government has cleverly changed the characterization of the conflict from being an ethnic conflict to counterterrorism. And it's a buzzword in the political realm, certainly in the United States, and I know Great Britain. You just say counterterrorism, people stop thinking, okay, we can't take them off the list. We have to try to reduce our risk to nothing, even though the Tamil Tigers have never threatened an American ever. Why they're on the list, you sort of shrug your shoulders. This is rather silly. But I've been involved in defending. Uyghurs are those who live in East China. They're Muslim, and they were captured and sent to Guantanamo Bay. Their enemy is China because China tries to suppress their culture like the Sinhalese Buddhists do the Tamil culture. And yet, you know, the United States has identified them as a terrorist group. Uyghur, no, I can guarantee you, no U.S. citizen has ever felt a threat from a Uyghur, and yet there they are sitting in Guantanamo Bay. Oh, we can't take them off the list because once you're on, you're there forever. Even Mother Teresa couldn't get off in this kind of situation. So we need to be sensitive to that and say this isn't about the Tamil Tigers. Counterterrorism is a pretense for genocide. That's what happened in Sudan. The Sudanese president has an arrest warrant out for him for genocide, and his defense was, oh, this is counterterrorism in Darfur. And the prosecutor said, no, that's the pretext, but the motivation is genocidal. And that's what we've got to do with regard to our case as well. They just really have a soundtrack that is their defense. No matter what criticism is made, and you can demonstrate all the civilians, the schoolgirls who are 12 years old being killed by bombing, walking to school outside of any war zone, and they'll say, this is counterterrorism. They were secretly going to they were blown up because they were trying to manufacture a grenade. That's the only way they know how to respond, no matter how ridiculous it is. And that's, in some sense, discredits itself because they've called everyone in the world a Tamil Tiger and terrorist. Louise Arbour, Human Rights Commission, Alan Rock, who looked at child soldiers, everybody the UN sends, everybody who comes in and says anything critical, you're suddenly a Tamil Tiger. So it loses its credibility. It's like the boy who called wolf too often. All right, no one believes it anymore. But we still have to be sensitive to that, in the sense that many are so unschooled in the United States, especially the Congress. They don't know where Sri Lanka is on a map. They don't know any of the history. They're worried about bailouts and other things. Who cares? They don't have constituents in writing them in every day saying, hey, what's going on with the genocide in Sri Lanka? You'll notice during the long presidential campaign, the primaries, the general election, did you ever hear a single question about Sri Lanka? Nothing. Silence. Not a single question, even though we have a U.S. citizen involved in that. Got some on Darfur, but not Sri Lanka. And then we want to pursue, in tandem with the genocide case, these civil cases I have described, which are more auspicious and moving along faster because we don't confront the need to convince the government to do anything. We just file this on our own. Those victims who are the survivors of extrajudicial killing or torture can then sue in U.S. courts, and we can sue Mahinda, we can sue Gotabaya, we can sue Bezo, we don't have to be worried about the diplomatic ramifications because we sue on our own. We're able to push the agenda as fast as we want through discovery, and otherwise I could probably write up a complaint in 45 days, and you have 20 days to answer. Moreover, we're fortunate in some odd sense that Gotabaya and Fonseca have large properties in the United States, so if they want to default and not show up, fine, we'll sell their properties and collect the millions on that score. They are valuable properties. They're not little hovels, as you can imagine, when you're in the government and nepotism is as widespread as it is. I'm sure the money was probably laundered from taking a deal from the arms purchases or otherwise in order to buy it there. And that's what we hope to do. Now, I could ask, why aren't we focusing on some ultimate solution to the conflict there? You know, an independent state, which I think is justified, or doing something with regard to how the tigers are treated. It's just that we wanted to have a goal that's manageable. You don't want to reach too far and dissipate your resources on a hopeless exercise. And in my judgment, these goals, they're beyond us right now. We need to get the genocide indictment prosecution by itself will be an educational mission. Then once we have that, then when you say, now we need statehood, they'll say, now I get it. Now I've seen what the Sri Lankan government is doing. You need a state like East Timor or Kosovo. Remember, it took in Kosovo, CNN showing all these pictures, driven into Macedonian and brutality. That's what was able to convince the lawmakers, because they won't necessarily read something like this, but you got to document it. I'll have to write them an executive summary. But they'll watch TV.